My name is Lindsay Schramm. I own the North End Organic Nursery in Boise, Idaho, as well as Sustainable Growth Organic Lawn and Land Care. Today we're visiting a customer's yard that we've had as an organic yard for at least 3 years now, and it's looking quite good. I just wanted to kind of show some examples of what you might want to look for in a yard and how you can keep yours organically so that you don't have to use chemicals and still keep it green and pretty. What I have here is what we call a soil profiler. It is a hollow metal stick that I can press into the ground, and it's going to pull up a plug of soil that's going to show me the ground for about 8 inches. The important part of this is going to show me kind of what's towards the surface and how much soil I'm actually dealing with. So if I'm lucky, the soil is going to be soft enough to just sort of slide it in. And of course, it is pretty good. Got a foot thing there just to kind of jam it in. I don't need to take it all the way. I'm just going to take it far enough to where I can at least get, a good 4 or 5 inch sample. Twisting it, pulling it out. What this does is it gives me the opportunity to take a look at a customer's yard, and what I can see here is that he has good healthy soil, which I'm happy to see considering he has been with us for a while. We've got roots coming down fairly far into the profile. He's watering nice and deep. You can tell by the moisture down at the bottom. A lot of people, when they don't water enough, you'll see a nice little wet spot here, and then down here it'll be dry as a bone, and sometimes I won't even be able to penetrate far enough because it will be so dry. So he's doing a good job watering. His soil has a nice texture to it. It's both a little bit coarse and sandy, but it also has some sticking power to it, which means it has the ability to hold water. An organic program really does the best with a good soil. If you don't have good soil, it's not going to work wonderfully. If your soil is low in organic matter, has too much calcium or not enough calcium, if it has too much clay or too much sand, the solution is always compost or compost tea. That will help to build the soil so that you have the microorganisms in it to be able to use the organic nutrients you're going to put down. If the soil is poor, then when you put down an organic nutrient, it's just going to sit there. This is what happens a lot of the time when people have been using either a chemical lawn program or a chemical lawn service. You've actually killed most of the microorganisms in the soil. And when you kill those microorganisms, you've killed the digestive system and the immune system of the plants that you're trying to grow. By re-inoculating the soil with compost and compost tea, you allow that ecosystem to be reinvigorated so you can actually digest the foods that you're going to be putting down all organically. If you're going to grow grass in the high desert or in any area where you don't get a lot of rainfall, and if you're going to be growing a conventional type of turf grass, which is like a bluegrass, a fine fescue, or my favorite around here, which is a rhizomatous tall fescue, a much less water demanding grass than your fine fescues or your rhys and bluegrasses. If you're going to be growing grass in this area, you're going to need supplemental water. So the way that, like I was mentioning earlier, most of the problems that we come across have to do with people who aren't watering properly. The proper amount of water in an ideal world with good soil, good grass, everything in balance, is going to be about 1 inch of water 1 day a week. This is true for bluegrass and for tall fescue. However, under most conditions, it's sometimes when it's really hot or if the soil is not perfect, you might need to water more than that. The key here, though, is deep and infrequent. Ideally, we want to see people watering 1 inch of water 1 day a week. What we have a lot of people doing is watering for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, which is putting out maybe 1/4 of an inch of water 4 or 5 times a week. What that does is it keeps the water very shallow. It creates a shallow root system. It creates stressed out plants that don't deal well with the heat. So how do you know how much water you're putting down on the ground? You can use something simple like this out of your kitchen, or a cat food or tuna fish can, and just place it in several different zones all around your yard. Turn on your sprinkler system, let it go until it fills it up 1 inch, and then you know how long it takes you to put out 1 inch of water in a certain amount of time. You can go a little bit fancier and get these little type of rain gauges, and you just poke them in the ground, and you want to make sure that you put them in a variety of spots around your yard so that you can have a good average measurement. And you're going to take the lowest measurement out of all of the rain gauges to set your timer. So once you come out here and you check every few minutes. Once the rain gauge hits at that 1 inch mark, then you turn off your sprinklers and you stop the clock. What you need to do now is when you set your sprinklers, especially in the early spring, I always say in April is a great time to put your grass on training wheels, because the moisture from the winter soils are still pretty present. You don't need to be watering nearly as much. But when it starts to dry out and warm up just a little bit, turn on your sprinkler system, put down 1 inch of water 1 day a week, let it thoroughly dry out in between waterings, and it'll actually draw the roots of your grass further into the ground. If you have deep-rooted grass roots, when it gets really hot in the middle of the summer, they'll already be well equipped to find water from deeper sources. It'll also allow them to access nutrients that wouldn't be normally found at the top of the surface. And if, let's say your sprinkler system goes out one day and you forget to turn it on, or you're having a problem, your grass isn't going to burn out really quickly because it has really short roots. Grass, like plants and humans and animals, it's lazy. If the water is always present and right at the surface, it's not going to want to go any further. The other reason is because when you always have wet soil, you're going to be creating an anaerobic or oxygen deficient environment. And the roots aren't going to want to go deep into the soil because they're not going to be able to get to any extra oxygen. They're going to have to stay close so they can access the air. A healthy lawn is going to be naturally resistant to weeds and pests. Some of the ways that you can easily stress out your lawn is by watering them properly, but the other thing is by mowing them properly. Grass is a type of plant that takes well to mowing, but if you're going to be mowing it, it needs to be on a regular basis and it can't be too short. I always recommend to people that if you're going to mow your grass on a weekly basis, cut it to about 3 inches. If you happen to skip a week and the grass gets a lot higher, and by cutting it down to 3 inches, it's going to take off more than 1/3 of a blade of grass, set your mower even higher, because you'd never want to take off more than 1/3 of a blade of grass at a time. When you do chop your grass in half, it sends a chemical signal actually into the grass roots and tells the plant that it's in a high stress environment. It probably imagines that there's some huge hoofed animal trying to eat it away, and it sends all of its resources from its roots back to the top and puts a huge flush of growth back up. What that does is creates faster growing grass, believe it or not, and it creates grass that's going to become leggier and less healthy, attract more pests, and attract more weeds. What we're going for is a haircut. We want the grass to not really even realize that we're out there mowing it and just kind of knocking off the top. I always tell our customers to make sure that when they're done mowing their lawn, it looks more like it's more even, but not really any shorter.